And welcome to Rauta's opinion video, or sort of, anyway. Now, this video kinda got its spark, so to speak, from a satirical video where I was telling some hilarious or more or less hilarious stories about satiricons happenings throughout the years, sometime in past few years. This video I did last autumn kind of got interesting conversation going on, and people were actually having a kind of a debate in both in good and bad ways about the differences of various black metal countries. And this time we were talking mainly about Nordic countries. There was some claims or questions that, for example, do I prefer this and that country or another? And there were some really interesting and well kind of explained facts and opinions and whatnot that were, like stating that why there is much more in the Nordic countries than just Norway or Norway and Sweden. And this kind of gave me the idea that maybe it's time to talk about black metal in the Nordic countries, their differences, their ridiculous things, and why things are more or less relevant, why some bands are bigger and all that. Well, let's hope that this won't get out of hand, but I think this time I need a beer. So, there are lots of people who kinda think that black metal was born in Norway. That should give you a clue that those people are somewhat clueless. Now, I'm not gonna tell you that I know like everything or jack crap about the history of black metal, but anybody who has ever been into black metal more than maybe a couple of years should know at least the basics. For example, if we think of black metal grandfathers, Venom, Celtic Frost, King Diamond even, Bathory, etc. Well, how many bands did you notice coming from Norway? Yep, not a single one. In fact, Bathory is the only big one coming from the Nordic countries. Well, yeah, if we consider Denmark to be major league player when it comes to black metal, surely. But as you can see, Venom coming from UK, Celtic Frost / Hellhammer coming from Switzerland, and so forth. And then there are these kind of predecessors like some Sarcophago from Latin America. So it's not quite that simple that black metal was born in the Nordic countries. Surely there were some early birds to do the stuff and create this subgenre of extreme metal to worship Satan or have Satanistic ideas, occult and blah blah blah. But it's clear that it wasn't born in Norway. No, even though this land of Vikings has some really great stuff and lots of great bands throughout the years, it isn't the birthplace of black metal. Now that it's been said, we can move on. Now there's been a discussion about why Norway is better than Sweden, or Sweden is better than Finland, or Finland is better than either of these countries. That's kind of a meaningless. That makes no sense. Compare countries or the black metal scenes of different countries to each other and try to make a point here. Makes no sense. The thing is, when we're talking about relevance of a certain country, a certain scene, or certain bands even, well, that is a little bit more something that actually makes sense, but still, it isn't that simple. For example, about that conversation I mentioned you earlier, it made quite clear that some people actually think that because Norway has their biggest, most commercial black metal bands. Think of Dimmu Borgir, maybe Satyricon, Emperor, or at least was. Those kind of bands, while they made it big, it doesn't mean they are, in a way, more relevant. Now, if we take a look at each of these countries, all of them have great bands, and I mean great, musically, ideologically, lyrically. the amount of influence they have been, spreading throughout their music, how many bands and writers or even YouTubers or whatever they have been inspiring throughout the years. Whether it's about their live performance, murders, lyrical content, ideological discussions, imagery, I don't know, lots of stuff to be taken on one table and try to sort out what is the meaning of it all. Now, for example, let's take a look on Norway. We can easily list quite a few bands that had a huge impact on so-called second wave of black metal. Think bands like Mayhem, Enslaved, Emperor, Satyricon, Immortal, Dark Throne, which is my favorite, and lots of other bands, Third Scarred, kind of Take, and all those bands. There are lots of bands which have made a huge impact, not only on Norwegian scale, but on a worldwide scale of black metal. Now there are lots of people who are having kind of a weird Facebook names with like Ihsan, Immortal, whatever kind of thing, which is kind of a level of ridiculousness we don't even understand, but that kind of shows the impact that these bands actually have. Like when people are like nicknaming themselves for after like Abath of Immortal, or like some Mayhem vocalist or whatever, it kind of shows that these bands are more important than just creators of wonderful albums. Like if there is some Burzum copycat band that is also huge major influence in all that stuff, but like I said, Norwegian is only one piece of this puzzle. And while I love quite a few Norwegian bands like Burzum or Dark Throne or Mayhem and etc., the thing is, it's only one scene. While it's rich, there are lots of bands that actually sound quite the same. It's clear that these guys, when they started as the teenagers, and they become kind of groups of friends and whatnot, they started to do music and I don't know, trade tapes, trade ideas even. They kind of influenced each other, so it's kind of like a homogenic environment, where actually different bands kind of influence each other, and this kind of a soundscape kind of clones itself in a way, especially when their recording places were few. We all should know about so-called Pytten sound, the Greek hall sound. So, there are lots of similarities. Or, of course, there are like differences too. Like if you compare, like, I don't know, In the Nightside Eclipse by Emperor to, let's say, Transylvanian Hunger by Dark Throne, the clear differences, of course. Not to mention later on what Emperor did. Or Enslaved, they're kind of a Viking black metal. It's so much different than if you compare it to, like, I don't know, let's say Mayhem, not to mention Burzum, and so forth. But like I said, there's still lots of similarities, and that's one of the greatest things in Norwegian black metal, that there were lots of skilled and talented musicians which had visions, which made great lyrics even young age. And In the Nights at Eclipse is one of those grand examples of albums like what teenagers could do when they had these visions. There were churches burned, and there were like big black flame going on. That is all very great, but nevertheless, black metal wasn't born in Norway. Period. Get over it. You might like Norwegian bands more than other bands, but that doesn't mean it's more relevant just because it's more commercial or selling more albums each year, playing on bigger stages. Because lots of, or at least quite many of those bands have kind of started on the decline already. I'm not talking about last 2 or 3 years. I'm talking about more like 10 or 15 years. Like, how many of those most influential bands in the 90s have made good records on the last 10, 15 years? Well, I can name Enslaved being one. Great band. But then again, nothing to do with black metal anymore. I mean, like, their maybe last black metal-ish album was created prior to this millennium, right? So it's not the same anymore, and still many people consider that black metal was born in Norway. God damn it. Sarrigon said some 15 years ago, I think, that they were gonna, take black metal to the States, United States of America. Hello, there are bands like Von and others that have been existing before Norway. Well, that's enough about Norway. Well, if you take a look at Sweden, it's great. Sweden has good scene or good music scene, no matter what the genre. If they do pop music, they sell it like crazy. If they do metal music, they sell it like crazy again. It doesn't matter if it's rock music, if it's, I don't know, kind of a dancing music or whatever, it's just crazy. It's the music kind of a culture is so strong there that it doesn't matter if they are goat worshipping bands like Battery in a way, or more like melodic, easygoing light metal like In Flames. It just goes crazy. They are really talented and kind of a breathing music in a way. And Sweden, I don't know where it actually comes from. Well, Norwegians are like living their ivory tower and being independent and all that stuff. Not being part of European Union and having this rich culture, and I mean rich in a way of talking about money. Sweden has been kind of like this big trading thing throughout the years, and I don't know if their cultural exchange has actually influenced them. The thing is, no matter what kind of music Swedes are touching, they are actually very talented. And you can hear it, take it like early 90s death metal. They were great bands. Take these quite a few black metal bands. Bands like Dog Funeral, Marduk, Dissection, so forth. Great talent there. Just the language of their black metal is somewhat different. Maybe more melodic than Norwegian, maybe not as grim in a way, maybe not as raw. So they have this great sense of melodic ways, and still they are, kind of very deep into the stuff. For example, Marduk never, seemed to me to be kind of a joke or clueless what they were doing. Just great band, and they have been, paving their own path for so many years. So once again, a great country creating lots of great bands. And we are not talking about multi-million countries. Norway, Sweden, Finland, or relatively small. Sweden being the biggest, we're still like in the whole different ballpark than, say, United Kingdom or Germany, France, Spain. And yet we are creating way more bands or giving birth to these bands. And the one thing all these countries have in common is that the kind of what you call it, people are not poor. There is very little poverty compared to many other countries, and all these countries are quite civilized. The relatively low crime rate and the school systems and all that. They're kind of like very well developed and all that stuff. So I don't know if there's some similarities between these or whatever, but all these seem to have kind of a like perfect soil for creating music. Now, if we talk about Finland, Finland is maybe the most diverse and maybe the most weird of these scenes, no matter whether it's about thrash metal, death metal, or black metal. Like, for example, while Swedes have this kind of a melodic soundscape, and I think maybe the best production when it comes to creating sound and all that stuff, Finland is probably the oddest one. Think of bands like Beherit, Impel Nazarene, Barathrum, Azazel, and many other old bands, Lord of Backathorn. They basically have very little to do with each other. Yet they all have their own sound, their own way of expressing their thoughts, whether it's about Christianity or God or gods or Satan or whatever. Like Berit and Horna, for example. Surely they play the same genre, but they don't have musically much to do with each other. Or Impel Nazarene and, Barathrum. Archgoat, Impel Nazarene, yeah, maybe, and maybe Beherit kind of fits there, but clearly they are all bands that come from kind of like different corners, and yet they are from the same country, just, you know, few hundred kilometers between each band. So maybe there is some kind of local differences which have then again influenced these bands. But they all have had this influence on, you know, so many other bands and so many web signs or traditional paper signs or, you know, fan signs and whatnot. And for example, Imbel Nazarene, there is no basically other band copying that. Sure, we have million kind of blasphemy copycats in the world, which are usually rather poor. But for example, Imbel Nazarene, great impact, but still hardly any copycat bands, and maybe it's better that way. But we have lots of Burzum bands, we have lots of bands copying like this Norwegian sound, especially when it comes to like bands like Mayhem or Emperor or whatever. But the thing is that all these scenes, Norway, Sweden, Finland, they are all different. They all have major players. Bathory being one of the most influential, considering that it's the oldest of these all. But then again, early 90s or even late 80s kind of gave birth to these bands. And there was this kind of a like, you know, sending death threat things between Norway and Finland. And I don't know how joke it was back then. There were lots of rumors going on. Some say it was just major joke, got out of hand. But then again, nobody got killed because of that. Some say it was more serious. Who knows? Who cares? I don't know. But nevertheless, all these scenes, despite being in different countries and different cities, they all kind of grew quite quickly. Norway maybe had a little more, you know, population in these scenes in the different cities, you know, big cities like Oslo or Bergen, and you know, so not that much difference. Like Finland, it's more scattered around, you know, like Lapland or like Berit and Lord of Bagathorn came. It's like almost like 1,000 kilometers compared to Turku, the place of Archgoat, or like uh, eastern parts of like Finland, where like Varatrum was basically most active. So all these are in different places, and despite of all that, lots of bands creating their own version of black metal, which was then again, like I said, conceived earlier in different places, in different countries, and then kind of steeped these ideas into these various cities and bands and people getting on. Now, Finland is not only the oddest when it comes to, you know, the bands being more, I don't know, versatile, but also Finland is probably the least successful when it comes to commercializing black metal. And now I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not either claiming it's a good thing per se, because, well, some people say that money can ruin so many good things, and black metal being one of them. But there is always at least two sides to every story. And while commercial success can be easily kind of you know, spat upon, like, oh, those bands are just crap because they are doing money and blah blah blah, they're selling out and all that stuff. I don't think it's that simple, really. But there are some truth to that as well. So when people are like, you know, kind of dependent on the money they are making, who knows what kind of compromises they are willing to make in order to make a little bit extra dough. And that can always affect. But that's point aside, being talking about these three different countries. What I'm trying to say here, meanwhile, lots of people seem to think that it's a Norwegian thing. I mean, black metal. Uh, to me, it strikes that how clueless they are. Surely there is some cult value, you know, when Varikenes killed Euronymous, you know, the Mayhem guy. So surely, or, you know, burned some churches. Churches were then again burned in different places, but so much happened in Norway. I remember reading those, metal magazines talking about this when I was in my teenage, and there was talk about, you know, this murder and all that stuff. So yeah, of course, that has influenced so many places and people and bands, and it kind of Norwich had got into the spotlight for so long time and so for so many reasons. I mean, like I said, the bands are great, but like I said, it wasn't born there. It just got so much attention. And now when I mentioned that all these three countries are one of those with low crime rate and kind of a rich people, Norway being maybe the prime example, it's kind of a curious. Maybe if these guys had, I don't know, more everyday struggle, think of like Brazil and the favelas, maybe then it would be something different. I don't know, but it's kind of a curious. But for example, when I watched this Black Hearts documentary about people traveling to Norway in regards of going to sacred or unholy black metal place, and there was this term was used called black packers. So like backpackers, but blackpackers, black metal travelers basically going to Norway just to feel this cult thing, to feel this kind of black metal flame burning. It made me like, what the hell? People actually traveling to Norway? And then there was this bus, going to one place to another to, actually show these cult places like the burned church and now rebuild or whatever. Or maybe it wasn't burned, but you get the idea. And they're like, that has been commercialized not by the black metal scene, but the Norwegian people. Maybe it's just, some travel agency, maybe it's some cultural ministry or whatever creating this. And to me, it felt like, what the hell? I couldn't imagine this happening in Finland. Maybe not even Sweden, but anyway. And in this documentary, there was also this kind of like, they were playing in this like a big music hall, which were more suited for orchestral music or classic music or whatnot. And then when there was this person, I'm not sure if she was the some kind of minister or a town leader or whatever, but she was basically giving the speech and reading, oh, I also like metal and doing these signs and whatnot. And to me it felt so goddamn weird, and not in a good way. It felt like this is the way, like we have this saying in Finland called salonkikelpoinen, which means that when things go to that phase, it's kind of like approved officially. It's like when the ministers in their suits and politicians, can do this golf clap thing about good metal performance. Like we had this prime minister some few years ago when metal was heating up in Finland. I'm not talking about black metal, but kind of a more mainstream metal. And even the prime minister doing this, and you were like, what the hell is going on? It was like people were trying to capitalize on metal or gain popularity because of metal being a big thing. Now, clearly we didn't have this level, that this Norwegian where these township leaders come to the on stage and welcome people dressed in black and wearing all kinds of t-shirts saying like sacrifice your child to Satan or whatever, and then like this politician in the the suit and having their speech from small pieces of cardboard paper, whatever. It felt so wrong and stupid at the same time. Then again, in Sweden, they also know how to kind of make this all weird. Like when Vatan get the Grammy Award, and at least there is also in Norway like the Spielman, kind of like a musician kind of a prize for given the artist and all that stuff, or like when Gal of Korgroth was selected as the homosexual person of the year or something like that. Those are so weird because they're trying to, mainstream this whole scene or this kind of a phenomenon. They're trying to mainstreamize. Can I use the word? Yes, I can. Anyway, you get the idea. And it felt so stupid. So in Finland, I think you're kind of more safe in a way that no matter how big metal will be, it won't be, officially kind of a supported or accepted as a like a yeah, it's a good thing. Actually, there being these kind of events where some people politically inclined have been trying to boycott certain gigs because so much other political stuff or whatever. So at least there's some sort of danger or underground cult still happening in the metal scene in Finland. I'm sure that it also happens in Sweden and Norway, but it's kind of hilarious that at the same time people are trying to have this cult going on and all these ideological side and lyrical sides and whatever, and then there are these kind of mainstream stuff, raw satanistic black metal bands being awarded in a kind of a mainstream show and all that stuff. So Norway has clearly made that, kind of accepted black metal as a kind of a thing. They are trying to, I don't know, it's so weird. They're kind of trying to make it kind of like a part that everybody is cool to understand it, and saying like it's not dangerous or it's not that bad. It's like kids playing in a yard or whatever. So it's so weird, and this is kind of making the idea stronger that black metal came from Norway. For example, in this Black Hearts documentary, it was kind of like given the idea that black metal came from Norway. And I was like, what the hell, is this kind of like a travel agency ad actually, not a documentary? So those people should, take their head out of their bottoms, because it makes no sense how they are actually trying to, commercialize or to do more mainstream out of it. But the thing is, all these countries have their relevance. All these, countries have the bands that mean a lot. But then again, it's, of course, I guess people who are more aware of Norwegian stuff, because being more commercialized and more mainstream, it's clear that these people are thinking that, hey, only Norwegian black metal is relevant because they sell more albums. They are approved by the state. They are kind of a nice thing which you can watch on a television channel with your family. So in that respect, if that's what black metal is, I don't want to have part with it. So it's to me it's ridiculous. But if that is how people want to, value black metal or any kind of underground metal, sure, go ahead. Make it the next Nickelback or whatever. If that's what you want to do, go ahead. But don't try to claim that that is black metal anymore. No, there was lots of probably things which I could go on and explain about these differences, these countries, and all kind of weird phenomena. But we're almost 30 minutes in, so I guess let's call it a day and put this video to rest. I'm sure that many of you will disagree with what I said. Some will agree, and some will just, shrug and go on and not even watch the whole video. That's totally okay. Just give me your feedback. What do you think? What makes black metal and these countries relevant? What did I forget to say? What did I forget to question? What did I forget to answer? Should you have any questions, opinions, random comments, keep them going in the box below. And if you are more in the thumb up or thumb down type of person, well, you can do that as well. And as always, please subscribe to the channel if you like the content we're doing, because, well, that helps us to keep the channel growing and bring you more interviews and other material in the future as well. I'll say to you, keep peace, cheers, skål, and whatever you say, come by. See you soon and keep listening to Black